Hey gang, Ronan here. Welcome on back to the Cade and another episode of Suckerpunch Sunday. And because we're in the midst of the holiday season, with Christmas only 2 weeks away now, really, get your shopping done while you can, folks. We figured we would go back and take a look at something that really tended for people of my generation in a really twisted way. Because that's the way the 80s went. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just how the 80s were. It was a different time. Trust me on this. But in this case, we're going to go back to 1992, and we're going to play a game that is based on a movie that in some circles qualifies as a Christmas movie. Yes, you heard me right. There are two movies from the 80s that are considered to be Christmas movies, even though they have nothing to do with the fact that, except that they are set in Los Angeles in Christmas. The first one, obviously, is Die Hard. The second is Lethal Weapon. Now, this game was created by Ocean Software to coincide with the release, actually, of Lethal Weapon 3. The original Lethal Weapon, if you've never seen it before, was an action movie featuring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. It's one of the better buddy cop movies to be made in the decade. And it was released in 1988. They made a sequel, if I remember right, in 1989 or 1990, Lethal Weapon 2, that also featured Joe Pesci. And then they made Lethal Weapon 3 in 1992, and that is to coincide with this. So, what we're going to do over the course of the next 25-30 minutes is we're just going to try and get through this game. Now, this is not made like any standard... Well, it's an action platformer game. It does not follow much of what I recall about the actual movie. So let's get this clear up front. Lethal Weapon 3, if I remember right, dealt with housing development and corruption and stuff like that. The bad guy in this game, Jack Travis, is still the same bad guy from the movie. But like most adaptations to video games, you go through a much different route to get to what the story ultimately is. So if I remember right, Lethal Weapon 3, it opens with them in a parking garage under a skyscraper or in a building trying to defuse a bomb in a car. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. So, and what I will do is I'm going to pause it right here just so we get an idea of how this game works. So, you get to play as either Riggs or Murtaugh. You always start out as Riggs, and if Riggs should be killed in the course of the game, you immediately switch to Murtaugh for the rest of it, and then, as far as I know, you don't get Riggs back. This is a game that I think if you play it all the way through and you play it right, you can beat it in like an hour. So this could qualify also as a one-day build. So on the left, you see that segmented purple bar. That is your life gauge. The zeros in the middle is your score, because this was still at a time where they kept score for this sort of thing. Not that I know that it matters much. And then on the right, you'll see an icon that looks like a gun. That's your pistol. And then that corresponding bar is how much ammunition you have. Now, something you can do in this game is if you hit the select button, and it did take me a while to figure this out, you can cycle through either having your weapon on hand or just using your martial arts. Because again, if you've seen the original movie, Mel Gibson being the titular Lethal Weapon as Martin Riggs was versed in both gunplay and martial artistry. Now, these things I'm picking up here are knives, and I can throw it and immediately take a guy out. And this E is for energy. So, your A button is jump, and then your B button is attack. And when you attack with your martial arts moves, all you can basically do is kick a guy in the face. But when I went through my practice run, as I always do to make sure these games work, what I found out, and it was something that was mentioned in the notes on this game, is that one of the frustrating aspects of it, apparently for gamers at the time, was your ability to kick guys in the face was more powerful than your gun. Which a lot of people found a bit frustrating. Now, aside from that, this is just your standard action side-scroller. And each mission, I suppose you could put it that way, is split up into 3 parts. So we're on the path to the camp. Although what camp it is, I have no idea at this point. Now this bulletproof armor that I just got makes me, as you can see, quite invincible for the time being. And I want to take full advantage of that. But even though I'm losing life, now I'm going to switch back over to the gun really quick because I want to at least show you how this works. Now, it's pretty much a one-shot, one-kill sort of thing. But as you go through more ammunition, it runs down quicker. So this thing you can't see up top is actually a helicopter. And it will sit there and shoot at you until you take it out. And sometimes it is not easy to take it out. Sometimes it will drop like a grenade or something and you have to use that to throw at it. Or if you've got ammunition available, you use your gun and you shoot it that way. But usually in that situation, it's still a one shot and it's taken down. Now this game, when it was released, it came out both on the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. It was also released on the Game Boy. It also came out on MS-DOS, the Commodore 64, the Atari ST, the Amiga, and in the arcades. Although I don't remember ever seeing an arcade cabinet for this game. Now, to be fair, in 1992, I wasn't necessarily looking for those sorts of things. Because I unlocked the secret there and picked up the vest. Ah! I didn't want to do that. So if you fall off into the drink, you see you lose a ton of life that way. And you do not want to have that happen. Alright, switch back to my gun here really quick. Okay, so now I can't jump here, and I can't jump here. But if I come down here very carefully and kick this wall, I get an energy boost, and now I can jump over it. When I was first playing this game and I was checking it out, I, for the life of me, could not get that to work. Alright, so now we get to the boss of this level. And having turbo on your controller is really great, because all you have to do is just sit there and just keep kicking them in the head, and down they go. And now we are through stage 1, which is the park. Now we've got to go into stage 2, which is the camp. Now, when this game was released, the reviews for it were, like I said, that it was considered to be a difficult side-scroller where you have to complete 4 missions. So there are basically 12 levels in the game spread across 4 missions. And the first 4 missions have us trying to do things like we got to rescue Joe Pesci's character, Leo Getz. We got to defuse a bomb in the shopping mall, which, if I remember right, like I said, was the original opening to the movie. We got to stop a smuggling operation, and we've got to prevent people from blowing up the sewer system. And then we ultimately have to deal with the final baddie from the movie. If I remember right, that takes place in a housing subdivision that he's helping to build. If I remember right, Jack Travis was a crooked cop in that movie. If you remember it better than I do, by all means, let me know. Not that I'm an anti-movie person by any stretch. Like I said, it's just been a long time since I've seen Lethal Weapon 3. I've watched the original quite a few times. But by the time the second one came out, I was kind of done with it. Not that it's a bad... I don't remember Lethal Weapon 3 being a bad movie. I remember seeing Lethal Weapon 4 and thinking, alright, they've beaten this horse well past its best days. Alright, drop me another grenade here. Ow. There we go. Now, if you kind of push down on the controller, that helps you do that downward kick. Alright, we'll switch back to my gun for a little bit. Well, I just picked up a knife. Power through these guys really fast. Although, that's why. We gotta get some energy back. Now, the company that created this game, Ocean Software, their story is a little interesting because they started out basically as a company that was going to take popular video games at the time and adapt them to home computers. And they kind of hit their stride working with a company called Data East, who made a lot of arcade games that I remember back in the day that I really enjoyed playing. Stuff like Ring King and Operation Wolf, and they had a wide variety of stuff. Karnoff, I remember, was a game that was really popular back in the day. Data East made those, and what Ocean decided to do, and Ocean was a British company that was created in 1983. They opted to make home computer ports for those games. And then kind of what happened in the mid to late 80s is, like LJN, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago with Karate Kid, and how they were getting in on trying to get whatever popular IP they could from movies, TV shows, and so on to create video games that people might be interested in. Ocean did the same thing. But they went even further, and they took stuff and made versions of just about everything that they could adapt. So they made stuff like the Addams Family. They made 3 Addams Family games. They made 3 Batman games. Even though, I'm trying to remember, it was Sunsoft who created the NES Batman game that everybody remembers most. They made stuff based on Clive Barker's Nightbreed. They made Darkman. They made a computer game based on Highlander, for Pete's sake, which is Highlander's one of those true guilty pleasures from the 80s that I have no qualms about. If it's on, I'm watching it. I don't care. But then they also made Platoon, Rambo 3. They made 3 RoboCop games that just ported over the Data East version from the arcades. They even made a Top Gun game that had nothing to do with what Konami made. But they also, like I said, converted popular games like Arkanoid, and they made a Donkey Kong one that I think, if I remember right, got ported onto the Z Spectrum computer, which is, if I remember right, there was a computer that was marketed predominantly in Asia, in East Asia at the time. But that came out, their version of Donkey Kong came out in 1986, well after it was already on the NES. So I think now we're in the shopping mall. Or no, we're in the exhibition is where we're at. Alright, I think I'm better off using my gun in this one. Want that. Now, one thing I've noticed is that, yeah, just when you feel like you're starting to run out of juice, and you might be at the end of your life here, you just happen to get an energy kick at the right time. Like so. Alright, see if I can get these guys to come down to me here. Now, I will say that so far, I mean, this game is fairly repetitive. In terms of you fight the same enemies predominantly. Oh, except I took out the hostage. I didn't want to do that. I was trying to save the hostage. Alright, take out the helicopter. Take these guys out. Alright, so here are the bombs. Ooh! Okay, well, I just blew that one up, and that's not what I wanted. Because it blew me up with it. So now I've got to get through the rest of the game with Murtaugh. Okay, well, we took them out. Now, I don't know if we're going to get Riggs back or not, because now we've cleared level 1, so now we're at stage 1 of level 2. Ow. Alright, let's see what I can do with Roger and his trusty side 6-shooter. Come down here. So his gun doesn't seem quite as powerful as Riggs' Beretta, obviously. Come down here, boys. I do like the fact that there is no timer in this game. The graphics aren't terrible for being 32 years old. It's easy to follow. I like the color variation of it. Fire in the hole. The music isn't terrible either. Although, to be fair, I do have it turned down a little bit. Okay, much needed energy boost there. Uh-oh, I'm almost dead. And I am. Game over. So we lost Murtaugh and Riggs and weren't able to finish it. So, okay, well, I mean, we're at 22 minutes, so we might as well call it good there. But that, everybody, is Lethal Weapon from 1992 from Ocean Software for the Nintendo Entertainment System, as well as the Super Nintendo version. Now, when this game did have one review, and it was for the Super Nintendo, and the aggregate game rankings on it is 62%. Super Gamer Magazine gave it a 68%, but I wasn't able to find any general reviews of the NES version. But you can try it either way. You can either try it on the NES or the Super NES. You can try it on a Game Boy emulator if you want. But first things first, is this a good game? I mean, it can be, but I think the issue with it is that it gets too far away from what the original IP, I think, was intending to achieve. I mean, at the end of the day, Lethal Weapon was a buddy cop movie. And I think if you had an option in this game, which I don't think you have, to be able to play co-op as Murtaugh and Riggs and go through this game, I think that would be cool. But you also have to remember that 32, 33 years ago, the capability of most game developers to create something like that wasn't great. I think if this was something that had been based off the original movie, as opposed to the second sequel being the third movie, it probably would be a lot better. Because that original script written by Shane Black was much more compelling and much more interesting. And I think there could have been a lot more done with it than just doing a side-scrolling, beat-em-up, fighting platform game if you incorporate that stuff into it. But then again, that's just me. That's just thinking off the top of my head. Because there was a little bit of detective work in that original story. There was a bit of... there's a lot of action in it. And there was obviously a bit of comedy and humor in it, too. So, I don't know. I mean, I think this... If this had come out earlier in the NES's run to coincide with that first movie, I think it probably would have done better. Again, I don't have any real ranking or way of determining how well it sold. Considering Ocean went out of business, they were incorporated into another company, Infro Games, in 1996, and then that was pretty much it for Ocean. I think it's a byproduct of the era, and again, like LJN, Ocean was banking on coming out with all these games that were based on all this movie and TV IP, as well as comic book IP and stuff like that, hoping that something was going to stick. And going down the list, and you can just pull this up on Wikipedia and take a look at everything they had. I mean, they threw everything at the wall. They did. I mean, they had everything from wrestling games to top-down shooters to sports games. I mean, they even made a game based off the off the 80s band Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I wish I was kidding about that, but they did. That's how far Ocean was willing to go to create stuff that they thought people were going to watch. I'm not saying that to cast aspersions on the band. I'm just saying who would have thought at that point that would have been a viable idea for somebody to go along with. So, you know, that's going to be when you have a company you're dealing with like that, the level of quality you're going to get versus the quantity of stuff they're going to throw out there, it's just not going to hold up. So, is this a game they can make now? I mean, they could, but again, the IP has well worn out its peak popularity by a good 30 years. I know there have been talk about them doing a Lethal Weapon 5 with all the original characters, bringing Bella back, bringing Danny Glover back, and all that, but I think it's still in development hell, and at this point, they are genuinely too old for that. So I don't think, I mean, at this point, everything is being revamped and rebooted and all that, so you never know. I know they did the TV show a couple years ago with Damon Wayans, and that went through its own paroxysms and all sorts of unpleasantness before it got ultimately canceled. So, I mean, this was very much a game of its time and an IP of its time. So, I think it's better off to leave it back in the late 80s, early 90s, where Die Hard and other stuff is as well, and have that nostalgia just be there. I think ultimately that would be the more better place to put it. So, but again, that's Lethal Weapon. If you want to try it, you can play it on pretty much any NES emulator that's available out there. I'm playing it on the Messen emulator, MESCN, which is a free emulator. It's not hard to find in terms of ROMs if you've never played it. Trying to find an actual copy of this game, though, if you want to try and play the cartridge, I would suspect that might fetch you a fair penny, because I don't think they made many of them. And if you could find one, if there's still any in circulation, it may cost you. So, not saying to go that way, but, I mean, with the amount of people the amount of collections I've seen that certain gamers have, if somebody's got this one in their inventory, it could be worth a pretty penny. So, but anyway, again, that's Suckerpunch Sunday for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you've been enjoying the content. If so, you know it showed at this point. We're 400 episodes deep into this puppy over 3.5 years. So be sure to tune in tomorrow as we carry on with our playthrough of Super Robot Wars Alpha Gaiden from 2001 for the PS1. Little programming note on that. We are going to have, I think it's either this week or next week, we're going to have a video that will be one mission split up over 2 episodes. Basically, it's a double stuffed episode. Only because the preamble on that episode, or on that particular mission, I thought was going to be like 3-4 minutes, as they usually are. It just leading up to the mission ran a half an hour, and I couldn't save it in between the preamble and the actual mission itself. So for editorial purposes, we're going to split that puppy in 2, because otherwise it's going to be, I think, about a 90-minute video, and I'm not putting a 90-minute video out here. Even pushing an hour with the episodes as they are, I know it's a stretch, but it's the best we can do, basically, considering how much is packed into the missions in that game. So, and we're only barely halfway through it, so we got a long way to go. Also, be tuned into Sports Saturday yesterday, where we're carrying on with Season 2 of our attempt to build the New England Patriots dynasty of the early 2000s without the existence of Tom Brady. We're 2-0 so far. And lo and behold, Drew Bledsoe's got himself a passing game, so we're pretty happy about that. It's a heck of a lot better than we were doing in Season 1. I can tell you that for note. Be sure to follow us on social media, on Blue Sky now. We are now on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, all at Ronan's Retrocade. We keep it simple. Look us up there. We're trying to post new information, new content every day on those platforms to keep people involved and help grow this channel and make it bigger and better. But I've done enough yapping for one day. My name is Ronan. It's been great to spend this Suckerpunch Sunday with you. Be safe, be well, happy gaming. We'll talk to you tomorrow as we dive back into Super Robot Wars Alpha Gaiden. Bye.